cost, just that there's not a lot of policing.
Totally amoral predators have control of our society at every level.
That's exactly right. And now the government is in league with them. It'll be legal in almost all 50 states, probably by the end of the decade. And all of this will lead to mass bankruptcy, like I said, all the social attendant costs of this. But I think more importantly, it shows when you have that collapse of social enforcement within your society, you can just see how I'm talking about a 7-year period. This is not long ago that this was even not a thing, that we went to bigger than the motion picture industry. And you and I are talking before football season. All forecasts say that DraftKings and FanDuel will make more money this year than they have ever made before. And 2024 to 2023 was already a 23% rise.
Why are people paying their gambling debts?
Yeah.
Why are people paying their credit card bills? I don't understand. Yeah. I mean, it's like so one-sided. It's like you're a college student and you get credit card offers, free credit cards, and you get lured into something like this. You get destroyed by it, but you still have to pay your debts.
Yes.
So it's all upside for them. And then people wag their finger in your face, so like, oh, you a communist? Am I a communist? No, I'm not. If you say like, why would you pay your debts? Why would you ever?
It's user
pay off. It is, yeah. And they're the ones who should be ashamed.
Not just ashamed. Our legislators should do something about it.
I really do want to start a political party. Don't pay your credit card bill. Do not pay your gambling debts. I really do.
It'd be a general strike against, or student loan, honestly.
But what they do, and it's the same people, they take the frustration, the people who are benefiting from DraftKings and Citibank, they take the frustration that people feel, the stupid new mayor of New York, and they move it into like race hate.
Mm-hmm.
They basically take that momentum and they shift it into a safe direction. Like just hate each other on the basis of the way you look.
Yes, of course.
And that's very safe for their backers. But I'm just waiting for the guy who's like, no. The real criminals are the ones who are loaning you money at 30% interest or getting you to go bankrupt. Or getting you to go bankrupt on a sports gambling app. Like, those are the villains. Why don't we go after them?
I agree. I've been waiting.
Will you run for president on the don't pay your credit card bill? I will send you money.
Well, I've been waiting for somebody. I talked with a guy who's an expert on the history of political parties, and he said, one of the most popular issues that I think that would resonate is banning employers who schedule closing shift and opening shift. It's called clopening, right? Like people who have to work until midnight and wake up at 6 a.m. A lot of these are the most precarious people in our economy who are basically screwed around with by their employers, getting paid minimum wage, and feel the deep frustration of no power in their lives from financial institutions to their employers. He's like, I genuinely think just an issue like that would resonate so deeply. And then I started thinking, I go, why? Is that not even a thing? And I go, oh, well, it's because most people in Washington don't even know about the term that I just used. And it's about the everyday life of somebody who's worried about being able to buy a house. I mean, let's even put buying a house out of that. That's the American dream. I'm talking about let's just making rent. I'm talking about, being able to fill up your car. I mean, a large percentage of this country is a blown tire away from bankruptcy. A literal blown tire away from complete bankruptcy. Economic precarity to a level which is shameful, whenever we have the, richest country in human history. And, you talked about Soron, and what I really appreciated is look, we don't like Soron. I'm not pro-Soron.
I get it.
But when he says, hey, I'm just worried about the rent, and I don't care about Israel, because I'm going to stay here in New York.
I loved it.
I loved it too. That's all we need. That's what all people really want. I remember when Trump first term withdrew from Paris and he said, I was elected to be the president of Pittsburgh, not Paris. And I was like, wow.
So that's the problem with the Epstein thing. The problem with the DOJ decision yesterday to cover up the crimes of Epstein, which they are doing, is that it leaves people at the very end of their electoral options. It's like, I voted for this guy, and I'll speak for myself, I voted for this guy precisely because I'm really distressed. I want justice. I want honesty. I think secrecy abets evil. I want someone to focus on my country, like all the basic things. And I think Trump wants all those things too. But when you allow something like this to happen, people are like, you know what, the system itself is beyond reform. There's no reasonable step I can take to improve this country or my own life. I have to do something crazy.
Yes.
Like you're creating true radicalism when you do stuff like this. Because what's the option? I think Pam Bondi's under a ton of pressure. Again, I've always liked Pam Bondi. I know her. I think she's under enormous pressure. And, I don't know how good she is under pressure. Trying to be nice. But I don't think that she's like a sinister person who is, doing the work of Leon Black and David Barack on purpose, really. But I wonder if they know this is a real thing here.
They have to know. And the reason why I think they have to know is that the breadcrumbs that got us to this moment have already been sprinkled. Kash Patel testified and said it was suicide. Went on the Joe Rogan podcast and said, if I had that information, don't you think I would tell you? He killed himself. I mean, that was basically, this was an enshrinement of many of the things that they already put out there. And the criticism and really the outrage over each of those individual comments. But let's say the so-called Epstein files released with many of the influencers, there was outrage at every step. So they're not stupid.
But how can you say that thousands of children were raped, but I'm not going to find out who raped them?
Yeah.
How can you say that?
I agree completely.
They said that. By the way, when Pam Bondi went on television and said, I have a videotape of kids getting abused, I followed this case closely, and I know a lot of people involved, as I told you.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. I didn't know that. Really? Thousands of children got raped? Who raped them? Where are the rapists? Like, why aren't they in jail? What? This is the Department of Justice.
Yes.
That is so crazy. This is honestly one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my entire life. And I just think it's very dangerous to play around with this stuff. Like, very dangerous.
Well,
I don't want a revolution, but if you wanted a revolution, this is how you would act.
Yes, yeah, it is. Because, I gave Versailles as an example. When you pick the court over and over again, and the people start to wake up to that, bad things can happen. And this is something that I find really disgusting about American elites, is that for a long time, the American Republic and the elite system has been one that can actually cycle at least some of the wants and the needs of the American voter to basically placate it and keep it from going down the path of fascism and or socialism. But when you continue to just double down on the imperium and on what fuels the empire itself, and you would keep ignoring all of these things, I do think this bill is an important part of that. Like, we're increasing defense spending. The empire is not even good at what's supposed to be doing.
No.
It's causing chaos abroad. The military-industrial complex is not even good at creating weapons or ammunition. The global financial system has been revealed as a complete ruse. We sanctioned Russia to death. Remember, we said that they will never rise. Their economy grew, and they were able to increase.
I tried to tell that story, and I went to the Russian grocery store because I want to live in Russia, though it's really nice. But to point out that, like, everything you said was going to happen didn't happen.
Yeah, they're doing fine. And then what's the lesson in that? Is that, the ability to produce the goods that you need, the ability to produce the energy, and to at least have a few allies who also reject the Western global financial system is all you need now to stand against the American empire. I think that was actually one of the most important things that has ever happened, because we threw it all at Russia over the most insignificant conflict involving the United States. And what has China been doing now for the last 5 years? Just studying, since Ukraine, they have been studying this. And
we did it because a small group of foreign policy and government officials deeply care about Ukraine. They really care about Ukraine. Okay, that's great. I deeply care about Sweden.
Nice
deeply
country.
care about India.
Yeah.
But you're not driving our foreign policy. They care about Ukraine for whatever reason. But they're imposing that on a country of 350 million people. Like, are you joking? You can't do that.
It humiliated us, really, in the eyes of most of our adversaries. Because the day that Russia can increase its GDP and can increase its ammunition more than all of NATO, while subject to the most devastating sanctions, supposedly in the history of the United States, that shows that it's all fake. And then that's Russia, which is much smaller and less much of a threat to the United States, let's say, than any other country in the world. And all those other countries are studying this with a fine-tooth comb to sanction-proof themselves. So when the time comes that we're really affected, and this affects me and you and my kid or your kids, that we're going to have a real problem.
I couldn't agree more. And to spend $1 trillion on something that's not working. I guess of all the money you could spend spending the military, decent people in the military, some really good people.
If it actually went to them, that'd be fine, but it's not, as you might know.
I read the other day this analysis from someone I know who's really smart, and the question was, will the United States use nuclear bunker and then they have a nuclear bunker buster?
And that's the least of our problems. We don't have basic ammunition.
No, I'm aware.
Yeah.
It's like the level of dysfunction is so overwhelming that, and that's the military, which you gotta assume is more functional than, say, the Department of Transportation or Energy or Commerce or Interior. It's like gotta be one of the most functional departments. At least they actually pass a marksmanship test occasionally. Then things are really in disarray, and we actually need reform.
Yes, like immediate reform. Because I mean, I just think, I don't know. I've almost come to the conclusion it's like we're either going to have to hit a financial crisis or a war. That's really the only time
I think
anything changes.
So where do things go politically?
A lot of that depends on Donald Trump and how he handles his meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu and the next coming years. Because, and this is why I was so concerned about Iran, and I think you were too. And also why the people crowing victory, in my opinion, were all stupid. And I listened to your entire interview with the president of Iran. It's a very important interview. At the very least, because whether he means it or not, he's trying to telegraph for peace. And not only trying to telegraph for peace, naming Israel as a prime provocateur, wanting better relations here with the United States of America, but also concerned about the fact that, at least according to our president, diplomacy was at least used in some way, either afterwards taken credit for, or at least the perspective was given, it was used as a ruse, which will undermine our ability to future negotiate. Let's say you are Iran, which, in my opinion, what I took away from this is, despite all of their genocidal terrorists who want to kill us all, they acted highly rationally. They only struck Israel. They have fired 14 bases, at the U.S. 14 missiles at the U.S. base. They gave us preemptive notice. They immediately then called it off, willing to sign a ceasefire. He seemed, at the very least, his ability to telegraph rationality in his interview with you. What I take away from that then is, rationally, if you are the country of Iran and you look at the history now and the context in which this has now happened, I don't see how 30 years from now we either don't have an actual nuclear-armed Iran or regime change. Because every single time, let's even look at Israel's operations. In 1981, nuclear program, or at least severely damaged. A reactor. Now that was sold one-time operation. By the way, do you remember that the Reagan administration announced it? It's paused shipments, I believe, of F-14s to the country. Why? Because we saw it as an outrageous move, which was destabilizing relations. Ronald Reagan, everybody, not some known anti-Semite, but of course, to know our history. The point is that preemptive in 1981, did it stop the United States from invading in 2003 for an operating change?
Upberg, a small business. Iberg.
In 81. Did it stop the United States from invading Iraq in 2003 for an operation and regime change sold on the lie of WMD? The point is that it actually hardened Saddam's resolve to at least create the impression of having nuclear weapons, and for a time actually amassing other so-called weapons of mass destruction, and hardened the want of Syria in 2007 when they did something similar. If you look at the history here now of the so-called preemptive strike from Israel, known as the Begin Doctrine, around nuclear weapons in the Middle East, every time there's a strike, eventually it leads to regime change. So Iraq, regime change. Syria, regime change. With Libya, of course, they had all kinds of stuff going on with the Libyan program. Gaddafi did the smart thing, at what he thought at the time, gave up his nuclear weapons. And what happened to him? He was, literally sodomized on camera. It was, 8 years later by the United States of America. So the history of that in the region should really, you have to be very stupid not to look at every single one of those instances and say, yeah, I don't know about whether dealing with the United States or Israel here in this context is one that I can trust. In fact, I should probably just go get a nuclear weapon. Let's take the only member of the Axis of Evil today that has never been bombed by the United States of America, North Korea. I saw a book about Kim Jong-il behind you, and I've recently had this theory. I'm like, is Kim Jong-il one of the most vindicated men in history? He was seen as an insane person. Remember the movies and his liquor?
Very well, yeah.
his fundamental insight in 2002 was, no, we don't trust these people. We have to sprint to a nuke. We're getting the H-bomb. We're testing underground. We will establish a credible nuclear deterrent. He dies, and his son immediately pours all state resources into creating an ICBM and a credible nuclear threat to the United States of America, capable of hitting the United States homeland. And he, in my belief, is Kim Jong-un will die of natural causes in his own bed because of that decision. That is the only way to assure that the United States will not mess with you. And now, actually, what Israel has created is a situation where the highly rational decision, after your entire military infrastructure has been, infiltrated by Mossad, you've walked with impunity, you've seen diplomacy used as a ruse. I don't see how we can't either go down the regime change path again or have a nuclear Iran. Now, on top of this, of course, is Israeli action. Prime Minister Netanyahu, according to the Jerusalem Post, which is, an Israeli media outlet, they write that Prime Minister Netanyahu, one of the chief things he wants to secure from President Trump is the ability to conduct preemptive strikes anytime he wants on the Iranian nuclear program, which, of course, we were told was destroyed. If it's destroyed, I'm not sure why we need more preemptive strikes. But he wants a rolling green light for the future to be able to go in and take any things out at the time, which, of course, would only harden the strategic resolve of that country if
but
they wanted.
It can't be done alone.
Of course not, which they proved. They actually proved that to us when they said, we need you to come in and finish the job.
And to protect our homeland
Yes.
from ballistic missiles
Correct.
raining down on our cities. So any Israeli, and by the way, I come at this, I feel like I have to say it because I don't want to be called a bigot again, but just in general, I approve of and certainly understand every country's obligation to act in its own interest, including defensively. So
Yes.
I'm not even contesting Israel's right to be worried about Iran. They probably should be. However, every strike by Israel on Iran, by definition, requires the involvement of the U.S. military.
Correct.
So we're getting signed up for an endless war with Iran.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, it's like, no, this is my country.
Yes.
No. But I'm getting
It's bad for us.
This is what I was saying about radicalism.
Yeah.
This is the kind of thing that could make you radical, right?
Yes, and it's bad for us, and it's also bad for them. I mean, let's take the April operation. A lot of people forget this. Why did Iran, in April of 2024, launch all those ballistic missiles at Israel? It's because Israel bombed an Iranian embassy in the middle of Syria. Now, according to them, it was an IRGC command center. Maybe. I would say there are CIA officers present in every U.S. embassy in the world, so I don't particularly want to open up that bag of worms. I think there's spies in literally every diplomatic mission, including in Washington, which probably cross paths with many of those. I don't think those are legitimate targets, nor should they be. We should open that up. Well, it was because of that action that they knew would invite an Iranian response that Iran then launched those ballistic missiles against Israel. But who shot down all those missiles?
Allowed to bomb
It was
embassies?
Yes, according to them, as long as you designated a terrorist, base by your own definition, I don't even know if the United States ever actually technically signed off on that analysis, you're able to do that.
There have to be some limits, mutually agreed upon limits to behavior. You can't just shoot someone for pissing you off.
Right.
Okay.
But
you can't shoot up churches, including the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem. You can't bomb embassies, or else your embassies and your churches or your synagogues or your mosques or whatever, they're all fair game.
And
Like, you want to live in that world.
Right. It would be rightfully denounced as terrorism if that were done.
There's got to be some limit. What's the limit?
And even more big than that, what I said at the time was one of the reasons I didn't want us to defend Israel is I know that if they didn't think that the U.S. would come in and defend them, then they never would have done it in the first place. Is that it would have restricted their freedom of action and the freedom of action of the Iranians, and the most likely outcome between that was probably some sort of diplomatic solution. If they were actually forced to deal with this problem on their own terms without the big brother United States, or at the very least the big brother United States, equally distributed to both parties in regards to trying to bring peace and balance to the region. But it's our unending and unquestioning support which enables Israeli belligerent action in the region, which then invites blowback both on them but also on us. Okay, I lived during the 12-day war with the United States government warning me about terrorist attacks in my homeland. That is like 2005 Red Terror levels. Remember flying back then?
Very well.
And that is a psychological toll on our population, which was literally being done for a foreign country. and worrying about every U.S. citizen. There are millions of United States citizens who live abroad who were told that they had to be careful in going about their daily business in whatever country they happen to be in. Now, let's say that's in response to 9/11. Okay, we can justify that in terms of what the United States is doing as after being attacked on our homeland. But for another, as you said, it's too much. It can lead to radicalization. I'm trying to resist that pull, and what I'm trying to do here on my show as well is to talk all about this in a rational way. That's why I talk about Switzerland and Chile, just to put it in context, who this country is and what we allegedly get out of it. Let's remove all of the veneer.
Si te dicen que los juegos del tricolor se ven mejor con carne a la parrilla, tú diles que sí. Y ve por tu texto sobre el Whopper a la parrilla del nuevo tricolor.
Let's remove all of the veneer and the smears and everything else, and let's just talk in our own terms. And I have found that to be the enemy of the Ukraine discourse, of Israel discourse, of so much of the way that we orient ourselves. I mean, I always think about the Munich Security Conference. What? Why? Why are we obsessed with the Munich Security Conference? Asia is 50% GDP in 2030. We should be going to the Singapore Security Conference. And that's the only one that actually should matter. But why do they all go to Munich? Oh, because they like Munich. They like Europe. They like going on vacation. A lot of them have studied there. They have this cultural affinity. I get it. I'm not saying that shouldn't matter at all. But, our forward-looking leaders, even back in the 1930s and 40s, always had a very clear-eyed view of the ability to balance what was actually in U.S. strategic interests. And I think we really lost that from the 1990s unipolar moment onwards. And I'm watching it happen again. So, you asked me where this thing goes. It's all basically, it's on Trump and his relationship with Bibi. I actually think he's gambling his entire presidency.
I agree with
on
that.
all of that right now.
Yeah, and I have no idea what's going to happen. I believe they're meeting as we're speaking. I know them both, and but I don't know. But I've got to say, of all the kind of filthy disasters in the world, the one that I would want to stay away from with the most enthusiasm is Gaza.
Yeah.
So how is it that it's America's responsibility to unfuck Gaza?
Yes, and that was the plan from day one.
And what's happened in Gaza is not defensible. It's too much. I mean, these Haaretz said 17,000 children have been killed in Gaza. 17,000? I had to read it twice. They said that. So I think I'm just citing them. There are lots of other estimates, but we'll just go with these.
No, let's go with the Israeli press, which are often more critical than ours.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
They're way more.
Yes.
But let's just go with that. I think that's immoral. As a Christian, I'm very offended. There were, by the way, Christians among those killed there. They did nothing wrong. I'm offended by that. But even if I supported that, which I don't, I would say I don't think I want to have anything to do with that. I don't want to be tied to that. Why should I take responsibility for your crime?
President Biden sent his humanitarian aid float show. Remember that cost probably at least $250 million. That entire deployment almost did nothing. Currently, American contractors, I'm sure you saw this, are involved in this food aid scheme, which appears to basically just be like, look, I mean, I have to be honest here, it almost seems like a literal trap. Like there are hundreds of Palestinians who have literally been killed trying to get food.
Is this the one run by an American evangelical preacher?
I believe so. I mean, it's these American contractors, and this is set up through the United States government and all these private foundations. And I know this can get difficult. By the way, even talking about this, I recently saw referred to as a literal blood libel, is to mention the fact that people who were coming for aid were literally gunned down and murdered. That's supposedly a blood libel against the Jewish people. Like, again, remove your rhetoric and let's talk in the realm of facts. Your own newspapers are reporting the fact that hundreds of civilians were killed trying to get aid in Gaza. I'm repeating what your Israeli press is saying. I'm repeating what the independent press is saying. What the people in Gaza are saying as well, to the extent that there's any independent oversight of this whatsoever. And let's return to the question of, I think, what both of our orientation is this good for our country? I would say no. You can talk in the realm spiritually. I could also just talk in the realm, we can talk in the realm spiritually and like kind of what that means to normalize saying let's kill children, like Congressman Randy Fine or other members who are like openly celebrated and think it's like a good thing. But we can even talk about what we said about national interest. Is it healthy? Is it normal to be obsessed with with defending supposedly the most moral army in the world, when almost every counterterrorism and Iraq war veteran I know would be ashamed to have fought this way in the global war on terror? American troops, look, we made a lot of mistakes. mistakes, but you cannot fault the American soldier or the American Marine, the American airman for not, and many times putting their own lives on the line, and many losing them to protect Iraqi and Afghan civilians. In fact, often that was a core part of our mission. And they would, look, I don't think it was worth it, but when required, they were willing to do so. And I haven't seen that in the way that this war has been conducted.
I haven't either, but I don't understand why we would take responsibility for fixing Gaza. I mean, that's we can't fix Baltimore. What for real?
You're right.
What?
Yeah. Why should we? And this has been the plan from day one. That's what I was going to say is, remember, back in November 2023, even shortly after October 7th, Israeli Knesset members and others were writing in the Wall Street Journal, actually, it's the United States that should take in people from Gaza after we expel them. Or it's
so the people of Gaza are so dangerous. Every person in Gaza, including the children, they're all terrorists because it's genetic.
Right.
They've been saying that. It's genetic. What are we even talking about? Like, what is this? It's genetic? I can think of a widely discredited political movement in Europe that used to talk like that. It's genetic? Whatever. Anyway, but they're too dangerous to live next to. We can't even have them in the region. You guys need to take them. That is the purest expression of contempt for the United States I can imagine.
And that was step one. Step two was all of these broad plans about U.S. peacekeepers. Now it's broadly evolved. They're mostly trying to pass it off on the Gulf. But as you and I know, there's no Gulf military that could potentially occupy Gaza. It would, of course, either have to be fully funded by the United States of America or probably would result in some sort of U.S. troop presence in Jordan, serving as the supply mission with some sort of never-ending deployment that would put people at risk, just like our current occupation in Syria, where we continue to have hundreds of troops for what? If anybody thinks you and I are conspiracy theorists, let's not forget that after this Israeli-backed Al-Qaeda takeover of Syria, which was, I guess, U.S. and Israeli-backed Al-Qaeda takeover of Syria, that there are current negotiations between the Israeli and U.S. government right now, this is out in the open, about the United States actually filling in areas of Syria that were taken over by Israel and occupying them as some sort of safe zone between Syria and between Israel. And again, first of all, this is a government supported by Israel, and I guess by the United States now at this point, so why do the troops even need to be there? Also, we were told that we have to stand up against countries seizing territory like Putin and Ukraine. I literally watched the Greater Israel Project march forward, in the last 2 years into Syria, of course, the West Bank, and now with Gaza, and the expansionist behavior there, which we just don't talk about here at all. It's
Seems like a violation of our norms.
It violates every norm that we have about the way that a civilized nation were to conduct itself. It's what we condemn and sanction.
Isn't that why we're fighting Russia?
Exactly, and that's where the hypocrisy of it collapses in and of itself. And the only way it's justifiable is earlier what we referred to, this bastardized Christian and rabbinical theological doctrine. My favorite was the former U.S. Ambassador David Friedman trying to lecture you about Christian theology, right? And
you didn't learn that much from that.
You didn't learn much, right? But it's like, what? And I mean, my final point actually on that too, and as you know, there's probably no more contempt than by a lot of the pro-Zionist movement for the actual Christian evangelicals who, for whatever reason, are so broadly supportive of Israel.
Yeah.
They use them as pawns. They laugh at them.
Oh, if they knew.
Yeah, I wish they knew. And I know a lot of them listen to you.
Yeah.
I hope.
Nice people, good people.
If you ever go to Israel, probably 80% of the flight is going to be people from Alabama or all across the American South who are going to the holy city, which is great. That's awesome. But while they're there, they're subjected to all of this end times propaganda about why it's so important to support the state. And I think what's really sick is that the government, the Israeli government, uses them as political pawns in our country, when secretly they have nothing but contempt and laugh at them about, they're like, oh, look at these, gross people in our streets, or any of that. There's no actual appreciation.
I remember asking Benjamin Netanyahu, over 20 years ago, when terrorists Israel. I've never been against Israel, actually, which is the hilarious part. But I remember saying to him, like, you're using American weapons to fire into the Church of the Nativity? This was on CNN at the time, and boy, it was like, are you an anti-Semite? No. I don't want to fire into the Church of the Nativity. Like, how is that okay?
Right.
And why does everyone think it's okay? It's not okay.
It's not okay. And it's, I mean, we were talking yesterday about in the, the recent settler violence that happened against these Christian bills. I mean, part of why I feel upset about this is not just about the, rightfully, if you're a Christian, you should also care about other Christians. But it's like, guys, this is just a normal behavior in the way that they act in this region and supported by the Israeli government. Now, again, as somebody who cares about my own country, it would all be bad things happen all over the world. That's a fact of life. But us funding them, it becoming a major political issue in our country, unfortunately, you're turning people like us who, Israel was never my number one issue. Never. I really did not particularly care. I spent time in the country and I liked it. And that was kind of I said, this Palestinian thing is kind of messed up, but whatever. It's their business.
This was always like a lefty issue. All these people, who you don't agree with them on anything, and they're running around talking about genocide. And it's like, just stop. I had no desire. Like, the last thing I want to do is get involved.
I felt the same, but I felt compelled once I saw not only the level. Well, I saw the level of which the Likud interests started basically becoming a part of the mainstream American right.
Yeah.
Became even more concerned when I saw Likud interests running state laws, passing BDS laws on the books of multiple states in the United States, restricting the free speech rights of American citizens.
Ron DeSantis signs a censorship law, a blasphemy law in a foreign country.
Right, in a foreign country.
I like DeSantis. That was the point where it was like, you're disgusting. I can't support
Ron DeSantis, who banned critical race theory, then basically starts affirmative action for Jewish students in the state of Florida. That I can't genuinely think of a better representation of the modern American.
But it just destroyed Ron DeSantis.
Yeah.
And I really liked Ron DeSantis. I knew him pretty well. I always tried my best in my limited way to promote Ron DeSantis because I thought he did such a marvelous job during COVID in Florida. I was in Florida for part of that, and I was like, oh, you're great. And he was totally destroyed by this one issue. Because it was utterly inconsistent with everything else he was saying. It's like, wait, we're against affirmative action. We're against blasphemy laws. I thought we're Americans. We have a First Amendment. How can you travel to a foreign country and sign a law restricting my speech rights?
You're exactly right. The University of California system, the largest state in our country, is now saying that any organization that supports BDS will have any federal grant money pulled. I mean, listen, this is insanity. That happened. I think it happened a couple of days ago. They're warning students not even to
boycott the United States. Can you boycott other states?
Of course you can. Of course you can. And that's my point, is that it's genuinely all just about a foreign nation and one political party's interests, and then hijacking it in ours. And I guess I should give the disclaimer, as you said, like you do, because I already know the inevitable. I'm not an anti-Semite. I spent a long time in Israel. I like Israel. I have people who I would consider genuine family who are literally Israeli and living in Israel. I love them. It is not about them. It's about their government. It's about their party. And more specifically, it's actually about my country's relationship with them. I wish them nothing but the best. And I just wish we just treated it like any other country. I have affinity for Switzerland, Japan, India. I mean, I've been all over the world, which is one of the great blessings of my life. And I want to look at our relationship with all those countries on a relatively equal basis and just say, okay, what are we getting from this and what are we getting from that? And instead, I've watched this religion, both around support for Israel, but Ukraine and NATO. I mean, NATO is a religion, as you know. It's transformed itself into a religion and not a defensive alliance. And watching that happen has been one of the most frustrating events of my life, because the consequences in both of these cases are so dire for the people who elect a lot of these representatives to power. And I mean, we got lucky that the 12-day war ended when it did. But to say that that's the final solution is ridiculous. Because again, Israel bombs Iraq in 1981. Mission accomplished? Yes or no? Israel bombed Syria's reactor program in 2007. Mission accomplished? Did it stop there? Gaddafi gave up his nukes. Is it only just about nukes? Of course it's not about nukes. It's about regime change. That's what they want. They're open about it. And, you know, plea, everyone, watch Israeli television. There are a lot of people who translate it. They bragging about this stuff out in the open, about killing Gazans, about regime change, about the way that they manipulate the United States. They say it in Hebrew. Ask your friend. There are a lot of Hebrew speakers here in America. They can translate it for you. It's sickening. It's out in the open. I mean, they make Fox. They put Fox News to shame. A lot of these people.
Which is hard to do.
Which is
Boy, I'm praying for Trump. I'm praying for this is the last political solution to our problems.
Yeah.
And I think all my hope is in Trump, and I hope that the administration course corrects and does it really soon.
Yeah, I think they need to on that issue with Epstein, and broadly, you know, you were elected on a message about America first, and just so blatantly putting another country's interests ahead of our own is not going to go unnoticed by a large segment of the American public, and specifically younger people who are suffering right now. The U.S. economy right now is a disaster. The ability to buy a house, rates are very high from the Fed. That's one thing he's correct about Trump, you know, especially on the Federal Reserve, about high interest rates, about the fact that we have like a collapse of social trust. I spent a long time talking about gambling. We're watching extractive industries get richer and richer on the backs of a lot of ordinary and working class people. Their lives are getting worse probably every single year. And, you know, just touting GDP and, tax cuts for the rich and all this stuff. I don't think people can put up with all of that together. And you have 3.5 years left. You know, you can still make a change if you want to.
For people who aren't familiar with your show, where do they find it?
Breaking Points on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you find it.
Congratulations on your well-deserved success.
Thank you.
And I hope you're an inspiration.
Dignitary to this wonderful place is nothing like the White House to me. We are represented today, and your continent is represented by Gabon, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mauritania, and Senegal. All very vibrant places with very valuable land, great minerals, great oil deposits, and wonderful people. Last month, the U.S. Africa Business Summit had recorded an attendance record, actually, and generated $2.5 billion in new economic deals for the United States. On June 27th, the foreign ministers of the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda visited the White House to sign a historic peace agreement that we worked out. They've been fighting for 30 years. 7 million are dead, and they think the number is actually quite a bit higher than that. It's been a long and vicious fight, and I just wanted to say that the country is represented. We're very happy that we were able to solve that problem. I think over the next couple of weeks, the leaders of both countries will come to sign the final agreement. As you know, we had foreign ministers last week, but we're going to be signing an end to the horrible 30-year war. Been going on for a long time. I've been reading about it, hearing about it, and it was a vicious war. It was a terrible war. I want to thank our outstanding senior advisor for Africa, Mossad Boulos, for helping to mediate this breakthrough. He was very much involved in that settlement. Most people thought it couldn't be done, but there's still much more to be done, and we're going to be facilitating peace also in places like Sudan, where they have a lot of problems, Libya and others. We have there's a lot of anger on your continent. We've been able to solve a lot of it. My administration is committed to strengthening our friendships in Africa through economic development efforts that benefit both the United States and our partners. And we're shifting from AID to trade. We had had AID, aid as we sometimes call it, right to trade, and trade seems to be a foundation that I've been able to settle a lot of these disputes, like as an example, India and Pakistan, Kosovo, Serbia. I said, you guys are going to fight, we're not going to trade. And we seem to be quite successful in doing that. To that end, we have closed the USAID group to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse, which was tremendous waste, fraud, and abuse. And we're working tirelessly to forge new economic opportunities involving both the United States and many African nations. There's great economic potential in Africa, like few other places in many ways. In the long run, this will be far more effective and sustainable and beneficial than anything else that we could be doing together. I'm eager to work with each of you on your vital issues and also to discuss security. We've encouraged our staff at the White House to work along with these nations. There's such tremendous wealth there and potential there. We encourage the countries here today to make greater investments in defense, hopefully, of course, buying our equipment, because we do make the best defense equipment. I guess we proved that about 2 weeks ago in Iran, but we make the best equipment, best military equipment anywhere in the world by far. There's nobody close. And keep pursuing the fight against terrorism, which is a big problem in Africa. Immigration will also be on the agenda, and I hope we can bring down the high rates of people overstaying visas and also make progress on the safe third country agreements. And once again, I want to thank you all for being here, and it's an honor for me. Some of you I've met, and some of you I just got to meet, and I think it would be nice if you said a few words to the press, which is right back here. You have a camera over here? It'd be nice if you could, oh, there it is. You could speak to them. You don't want to turn your head so much. I do it a lot. It's not pleasant. But perhaps we could start with you, please. Thank you very much. Great gentleman, by the way.
Você promover com ele, Sr. Presidente.
Thank you for giving me the floor, Mr. President. First of all, I would like to thank you, Mr. President Trump, for inviting us to come here today. I'm President Ghazouani, President of the Islamic Republic of Mauritania. Thank you, Mr. President, for this invitation and the invitation you sent to the other colleagues present here today. This is a very strong message from you, and we are receiving this message very well. This is a message of interest that you're sending to us, and it's a message that you're sending to the whole of Africa. All of this is generous on your part. We are receiving this, and we accept this message from you. Before I talk about my country, I would like to let you know that we are delighted to see President Trump's commitment to our continent. Mr. President, in the short time you've been back in office, the last few months, you came to the rescue for peace. You did it in Asia with Pakistan and India. The war sort of started, and if it had gone on, the consequences could have been a real disaster.
Kissing ass.
Since the beginning, you've been doing a great deal of work on the war in Europe, that is the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. You rushed to Africa to resolve a long-standing problem. Lots of efforts had been made United States. But your will made it possible for this agreement to be signed. And now, this conflict is behind us. You are currently working with a great deal of enthusiasm. And you're also working on the Middle East. You're paying a great deal of attention to the Middle East. We all know how far back this conflict goes. It is a conflict that is about 80 years old, 70 years, but it is also a war that has been raging for a year and a half. And you've also talked about the human toll. Many people have died in this conflict. Of course, you also stopped the war between Iran and Israel. That could have been a real disaster for the region. It's a sensitive region to start with. Your work in favor of peace has been tremendous, and we are also very interested in supporting peace in the same way. When there's no peace, like you said earlier today, when there is no peace, a lot of other things are lacking. When there's no peace, it is difficult to have prosperity. It is difficult to have calm, to have a sense of quietness. It's hard to sleep. It's hard to go about your business every day. You understand that well, Mr. President, and you're working on this. So thank you.
Moi, je suis le président.
I am the president of Mauritania. Mauritania is a small country. Depending on the criteria you apply. If you look at the number of people who live in Mauritania, it's a small country because we have about 5 million people in Mauritania. We might just be a little bit over 5 million. It's a small country also in the sense that what influence it has throughout the world. It's not like the US, Mr. President. Internationally, we understand that our weight, our influence is not that great, and we have no complex about this. It's also a small country because of our level of prosperity. We're not a very prosperous country. We have many problems related to the well-being of our population. But it is also a great country, a big country in other ways. Mauritania.
Hey, how you doing?
How's your night going?
Not too bad. How you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. Can I get a name for your order?
Malu.
What was that?
Malu. M-A-L-U.
Okay. What can I get for you?
Can I get the grilled chicken?
The meal.
I'll just get the sandwich
Okay.
and the drink.
Any sauce on your sandwich?
Yeah, the Chick-fil-A sauce.
Okay. Anything else for you?
A milkshake? Milkshake.
Yeah, what kind? We can do vanilla, chocolate, strawberry, cookies and cream, and peach.
Actually, let me skip that milkshake. I'll just take a lemonade.
What was that?
I'll just, let's skip the milkshake. I'll just take a lemonade.
Okay.
Yeah, just a lemonade is fine.
Yeah. And you said large or regular?
Regular.
Okay. Whipped cream and cherry okay on it?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
Actually, no cream and cherry.
Okay. Will that be all for
My
you?
bad. What was that you putting on? Is that the lemonade or?
You said you wanted a lemonade?
Yeah,
Yeah.
lemonade instead, not the.
Yeah. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Alrighty, it'll be $9.89 for you, sir. Here's that.
You were good to go. Have a great rest of your night.
Thanks a lot. Yep.
We're getting that food right out for you.
Oh, yeah. Thanks a lot.
Is a great country in the sense of its strategic position. It is on the Atlantic coast, which makes it a neighbor to the US. It is what unites North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, or what links the two. That is its strategic position, but also in terms of resources. We have a great deal of resources, many resources. And we have a lot of opportunities to offer in terms of investment. We have minerals, rare earths, rare minerals. We have manganese. We have uranium. And we have a good inclination that we have lithium and other minerals. We're the second largest producer for the last 60 years in Africa of iron ore. We produce a lot, and we have a lot of resources in our seawaters, so lots of fishing and whatnot. I don't want to spend too much time on this.
But I appreciate it very much. I appreciate it. Maybe we're going to have to go a little bit quicker than this because we have a whole schedule. If I could just say, your name and your country would be great. Thank you, please.
Muito obrigado, Sr. Presidente Trump. E sobretudo,
thank you, Mr. President, and for welcoming everything.
This is too much.
Second time you come as a guest.
This is too much. Can you just say your name?
But I will not talk so much. But Guinea-Bissau is a peaceful country, and we are a small country, but we are a great state. Not a great state like the United States. But we are a great country as well. And to end, we are following your dynamics and the war with Russia and Ukraine. And you can count on Guinea-Bissau. Thank you very much.
The Kingdom.
Recent celebration of your 249th anniversary we did at Liberia Embassy. Mr. President, we thank you for this opportunity to be here. Liberia is a longtime friend of the United States, and we believe in your policy of making America great again. And we also go strongly with you with your diplomacy.
Kiss ass, bro. These motherfuckers are here to kiss ass.
Liberia has a lot of
What a shame.
minerals, good
Liberia is
friends
also
for a long
separate,
time
so
has the
these
opportunity
hoes.
to do a survey of our minerals. And also we are committed to peace. And
GameStop.
we've been very lucky within our region. We are a country that had a series of democratic elections, and our country had been cooling down. And also we want to encourage American involvement in the investment in Liberia.
Kiss
I
ass.
would like to see that happen.
Everybody
We
here
want to
kissed
work
crowd.
with the United
But
States
instead of kissing the
in
crowd, they
peace
kissing
and
the
security within the region, because we are committed to that. And we just want to thank you so much for this opportunity. Well, thank you. It's such good English, such beautiful. Where did you learn to speak so beautifully? Where were you educated? Where? Yes, sir. In Liberia.
Yes, sir.
Well, that's very interesting. That's beautiful English.
Sure.
I have people at this table can't speak nearly as well, and they come from.
Where do they come from? Mr. Don, where do they come from?
Can speak nearly as well, and they come from.
Did they cut my boy off? Did they cut my boy off? These guys, they cut the crazy nigga off. What? What? No more audio or what?
No microphone for the speaker. No interpretation. There's no microphone for the speaker. Still no microphone for the speaker.
Could you turn that on? Yeah. Yes, please. There you go.
Yes.
I would like to commend you, Mr. President, for the success you had in reaching a peace agreement between Rwanda and the DRC. Africa is a vast continent that has many problems, and we truly count on you for your assistance in Sudan and in the Sahel, because no investment can be made when there is a war. For investment, you need peace. The other heads of state who are here with me represent countries that are at peace, and that has been the case for some time. When we also have raw materials, minerals, rare earths. We are not poor countries. We are rich countries when it comes to raw materials, but we need partners to support us and help us develop those resources with win-win partnerships. That is our wish. I often listen to your remarks and speeches, Mr. President. We also want our raw materials to be processed locally in our country so that we can create value and to create jobs for youth so that they stop dying. They are crossing the sea, the ocean, to go to other countries. That is what we want, to have local processing of raw materials. Gabon is a rich country. We have over 2 million inhabitants and a great deal of diversity, raw materials, oil and gas reserves. And we would like those resources to be tapped using an economic model that fits. Since our liberation, we have changed how we do trade. We've focused on transparency and bids for anyone who wants to come invest in our country. If you follow the news, we've also worked on agreements with the European Union, and we wanted to review those because we didn't think that those were win-win opportunities. So our market is open. We want to process manganese locally, which you purchase through a company called Aramet. And I'm sure that it's more expensive compared to when you can come and buy it directly from us. In order to do this local processing, we need 8 to 10 gigawatts of electricity. Again, this is an open bid. Any American company that wants to invest in electricity in Gabon is welcome to take advantage of that opportunity. Now, looking at defense, the Gulf of Guinea is an issue. There is maritime piracy in that area, and we want to work together to stabilize it. You said you had the best equipment, the best military equipment, and that's what we'd like to have so that we can stop maritime piracy in the Gulf of Guinea. We can't do it alone. We need a reliable and strong partner that is committed and that takes real steps, real action. We also need to be pragmatic, and that's what you are. And I'm a general, and I am too. I'm pragmatic. I like it when things move quickly. Our country is free, open to one and all. You are welcome to come and invest. Otherwise, other countries might come instead of you. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay.
Merci, monsieur.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. I would like to thank you for this invitation. It is an honor for us to be here at the White House and to have this opportunity to speak with you about the new partnership that you are putting in place with Africa, particularly for investment. I also wanted to commend you for your commitment to peace throughout the world and the incredible diplomatic success that you had with the DRC, as my colleagues mentioned. You said that this put an end to a long war that claimed many lives, and thankfully, you were here to put an end to this 30-year war. I also wanted to express that Africa supports all efforts to bring back peace to Sudan, Libya, and in the Sahel. Mr. President, as you've seen, you can only do business when there is peace and security, and you build peace. There can be better investment. Grateful to you for this. Now, with respect to my Senegal, for some 15, 16 months now, and I want to reassure all Americans about our political stability and our full regulatory environment, which we continuously upon in order to attract more investment. I want two projects that I think are an opportunity. I will speak about the U.S. Ecological Survey, which can help assess the potential of the minerals in our country. And thanks to American companies, we've been able to discover oil and gas.
Do this to raise your credit score fast? Have you seen this guy before? The guy that says,
paying your bills on time raises your credit score, right?
Some 950 billion meters of gas that we can tap into in order to support our economy. And again, here we were able to do this with an American company. Another project I'd like to mention, and again, I would like to invite American investors to take part in this. It's for a digital city. We identified a space within the city of Decorah. It has a view of the sea. It's on some 40 hectares, and this is a great opportunity for American tech companies to come in and make Decorah a tech city open to Africa. I was wondering what your secret was for resolving all these complex crises, and I know you are a tremendous golf player. Golf requires concentration and precision, qualities that also make for a great leader. Senegal has exceptional opportunities to offer, including in the area of tourism. So perhaps an investment could be made in a golf course in Senegal. It would just be 6 hours by flight from New York, from Miami, from Europe, or from the Gulf, and that would be an opportunity for you to show off your skills on the golf course too. Thank you for your attention, sir.
It's some way to show off my skills. It's a long trip to show off my skill, but that's really nice, and he's led a very interesting life. Person, he's a little older than he looks, but a fantastic job. He was treated very unfairly by his government, and he prevailed. And so congratulations on that. Really, congratulations. A great job. And you've all done a fantastic job. And so we'll be talking to you as we have the meal. Do you want to ask any questions, please? Where's my reporter from Africa? There you are. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Mr. President.
Very famous in Africa.
Thank you, thank you.
You're very famous in Africa.
I have one question for the African presidents and one question for President Trump. As you can see, Mr. President Trump, all the African presidents are very happy with your efforts to bring peace in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. My question to you is, today you are making history by receiving 5 African presidents and showing the interest of the United States to collaborate and to work close with the African nations. African continent is watching, African youth is watching, and this new approach that your administration is taking to deal with African nation, not only based on help, but in doing business that everybody can win, is really much appreciated for all the Africans. Planning, Mr. President, in the future to travel to Africa to see firsthand all those countries in Africa, all those potential that those countries have. And for the African leaders, my question is, as you can see, President Trump is working to bring peace not only in Africa but also in the world. Are you all considering to nominate President Trump for a Nobel Prize Peace?
That's a very nice reporter. I got to meet her 2 weeks ago when we had the Congo, and
The dawn is crazy.
we had some other people up from Africa, and that was the first time. But that's very nice. I appreciate the questions. Very nice, actually. Would you like to? At some point, I would like to go to Africa. Absolutely, we're going to see what the schedule is, but at some point, I would like to do that very much. Would you like to give a fast answer, please?
Thank you very much. Of course, we are supporting.
Microphone, please.
Of course, we
On
on soutient cette dynamique.
We are in favor of this dynamic for peace. We are very committed on peace. I am the first head of state who went to Russia and who went to Ukraine, both since the start of the war. I held the presidency of ECOWAS, and I went to see Mr. Putin. We spoke for 4 hours. Of President Trump is something else altogether. We are with you. We are behind you to see what we can do to help bring peace back. No one wins when there's war. So you have our support so that we can bring peace back. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President Trump. Thank you for your questions. A Nobel Peace Prize, while I don't see any problem with it, I think that President Trump deserves it for all the efforts that he's worked on. And he brought peace back in the SIAC region. That is my region, the region where DRC and Rwanda signed a deal. And so he is now bringing peace back into a region where that was never possible. So I believe that he does deserve a Nobel Peace Prize. That is my opinion on this.
Thank you very much. Very nice. Thank you. I didn't know I'd be treated this nicely. This is great. We can do this all day long. Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Mr. President, I believe that we have to.
On Ukraine, the president's intentions are not clear, but they are decidedly more sympathetic to the government in Kyiv than they were.
I have clients.
We have to continue to support America in the strength to be able to bring about peace in the world. America is a melting point and also a country that we all look forward to. And I want to encourage you, because without peace, we cannot have a world to live in. And we stand with you on that.
Right. Thank you. Well said. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for your question. Very important question indeed. Forgive me for saying this, but unfortunately, I don't really understand. I don't know how things work when it comes to Nobel Prizes, but I can guarantee you that Mauritania would never be opposed to President Trump receiving a Nobel Peace Prize, because he's already working very hard in favor of peace throughout the world with no distinction, no regard to what continent it's on, and he's working on areas where there are tensions everywhere, and he's committed towards peace, and our world needs more peace. Thank you. Thank you very much. The jury will decide. It's not a matter of voting amongst our countries, but what is for sure is that the results and the work has been done in such a short amount of time that, and I'm sure that the jury sees it as well and understands it. Prize. Congratulations on what you've done so far. If we took a poll, I think you would be very far ahead in those polls.
Very nice. All of you, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Peter?
Thank you, President Trump. James Comey and John Brennan, now under criminal investigation related to the Trump-Russia probe.
Other than what I read today, but I will tell you, I think they're very dishonest people. I think they're crooked as hell, and maybe they have to pay a price for that. I believe they are truly bad people and dishonest people. So whatever happens, happens.
And now, a few weeks after the strikes that you ordered on the nuclear facilities in Iran, there is an Iranian official who says you, President Trump, have done something that he can no longer sunbathe in Mar-a-Lago. As you lie there with your stomach to the sun, a small drone might hit you in the navel. It's very simple. Do you think that's a real threat? And when is the last time you went sunbathing anyway?
It's been a long time. It's been a long time. I don't know. Maybe I was around 7 or so. I'm not too big into it. Yeah, I guess it's a threat. I'm not sure it's a threat, actually, but perhaps it is.
Two Democratic senators now, Cory Booker and Alex Padilla, have a new bill out. They want to require CBP and ICE officers to have legible IDs, and they don't want CBP or ICE officers covering their faces. Would you ever sign that?
Well, they wouldn't be saying that if they didn't hate our country, and they obviously do. I'm surprised that they would do it, knowing a little bit about them. I don't know them well, but these officers are doing a tremendous job. They're great patriots. If you expose them, because of statements like have been made by Democrats and others on the left, usually, mostly, I think probably exclusively, you put them in great danger, tremendous danger. And it's sort of funny when people picket in front of Columbia, in front of Harvard, and they have masks on, more than masks. I mean, you can't see anything. Nobody complains about that. But when a patriot who works for ICE or Border Patrol puts a mask on so that they won't recognize him and his family, so they can lead a little bit of a normal life after having worked so hard and so dangerously, there's a problem with that. So they have this is the problem with the Democrats. They have a lot of bad things going on in their heads. They've really become they've lost their confidence, number one, and they've become somewhat deranged. I want to do whatever's necessary to protect our great law enforcement people, and they are right at the top of the list.
And your agriculture department also announced this week that they are going to start limiting Chinese ownership of American farmland. Why do you think that the Chinese have been buying up all this farmland in our country so close to military installations?
Well, I don't want to get into that. I have a very good relationship with President Xi. We're going to see, and I'm going to, they're going to be making a recommendation to me, but we have a very good relationship. As you know, they're paying a lot of tariffs to the United States now, and so I'm not going to get into that right now. Yeah, please.
Weighing whether to send another Patriot air defense system to Ukraine. Can you confirm that reporting?
They would like it. They've asked for it. They're very rare indeed, because a lot of systems have been sent to Ukraine. But they would like to. I know they made the request. We're going to have to take a look at it. It's very expensive.
ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music.
Hi, News Daily listeners. I'm Erin Park, and I wanted to share Nowhere Man. If just how far would you really go to disconnect? This season of the Expanse podcast is about a young American who, in 1999, set off alone into one of Australia's biggest, deadliest deserts. And what happened out in that desert made everyone involved think about life and death and who we are when everything easy is stripped away. Subscribe to Expanse, Nowhere Man, on the ABC Listen app.
In the White Musk is launching his own political party. Musk says his America Party will challenge the status quo that he believes is bankrupting the United States. Today, political scientist Jeff Cabaservis from the Niskanen Centre on what the party could stand for and who might vote for it. I'm Sydney Peed on Gadigal land in Sydney. This is ABC News Daily. Jeff.
Sachs packages arriving in T-minus 3 hours. Here.
It's time now for the Wall Street Beat. This is our top story of the day. Goldman Sachs plans to ask junior bankers to swear their loyalty in a bid to thwart poaching by private equity firms. Joining us now for more, broke this story, Bloomberg reporter Todd Gillespie. So we know that private equity firms have been going earlier and earlier to talent. We've heard as early as sophomore year of college. Goldman's used to this, isn't it? And I think you and I have both heard Goldman bankers say it's been a while since we've heard a private equity firm taking some of our talent. So what happened?
Yeah, well, I mean, what we know is that Goldman is now planning for their new analyst class this year to start implementing a rule where now every 3 months they have to, for conflict of interest rules, of course, tell Goldman whether they have already accepted a job offer from elsewhere, whether they've lined up a new opportunity outside the firm, which could potentially present some problems, some headaches. Maybe they're going to be working on a deal for a private equity company that they're about to join, but their bosses don't know that yet. Those are the kinds of headaches that you know these MDs want to avoid. But obviously, they also just want to make sure that they're keeping their best talent. So at the end of the day, this is also a let's just make sure that you're in your seat for a while.
Why is it such a big deal? I mean, isn't the idea that you go to one of these analyst programs for a couple of years and then you're free to do something else? Does Goldman Sachs really want to hold these people there and develop them?
David Solomon is so excited about his alumni network elsewhere.
David Solomon is very excited about his alumni network. David Solomon does boast of these boomerang hires where people go away and make big bucks in private equity, come back as partners to Goldman Sachs. He likes boasting about that in earnings calls. We all know that. But fundamentally, Matt, they also want the best bankers at Goldman to stay at Goldman, and they want to know that the people they're investing in are going to be there for the long haul, and that they're going to provide the kinds of intelligence, the kinds of networks that Goldman won over the years.
But surely, Todd, there are other ways to do that rather than having somebody swear an oath of allegiance, right? Why don't you just say, here's a pay package that's weighted heavily to later down the road?
Yeah, there are certainly ways of doing that, I'm sure. I mean, I think a lot of the banks have tried these sorts of moves over the years. There's also a limit to how many people they can promote. Obviously, each year, a lot of these young up-and-coming talent, they want to get big bucks as fast as they possibly can, and they know that private equity is willing to pay bigger pay packets.
So, want to bring up the meme stock accounts here, because these are the ones that have pushed kind of justice for the junior bankers for the last couple of years. High Yield Harry says these big bad banks are genuinely too scared to talk to sponsors about pushing back recruiting, so they take it out on the 23-year-olds. They have been working 80-plus hours a week. Now,
I mean, I knew Elon was not going to be happy, but the reality is, the board, they basically need to now step it up. And I think it's something where, I hear from shareholders around the world, right, on Tesla. And as one of the biggest supporters of Elon and Tesla, it was time to rip the Band-Aid off. You got to now put a new structure. And actually one of them, that we talked about in terms of the three things that we suggested, is actually something Musk wants in terms of 25% voting rights. And what I view as will ultimately be an XAI merger, potentially. But second, third, the political gambles and this sideshow, it can't continue.
Analysts seemed totally fine with Elon Musk, and correct me if I'm wrong, they seemed totally fine with him when he was getting along well with President Trump, and it seemed like the president's policies would favor his companies. Is that fair to say?
That's 100%. I mean, I view it as and we talked about it, the best that ever happened to Musk at that time was Trump getting into the White House. And obviously, you could argue Trump doesn't get into the White House if it's not for Musk. But like a lot of things, it took on a life of its own. Doge, BFFs, spending no time with Tesla, Mar-a-Lago, DC Doge, the brand issues. that ultimately is why then Musk had to take a step back and basically leave the Trump administration. But in your wildest nightmare, no one expected, hey, let's triple down, start a third political party, where now Trump actually becomes a foe, Republican Party becomes a foe. And that just becomes more of an overhang for Tesla.
So, the board as it exists now, is this the board that you think can bring about the necessary changes and set the ground rules as you are calling for Tesla? And Jack Hartung, who has been CFO of of Chipotle, excuse me. Kimball Reeve Musk is on it, Jim Murdoch, of course Elon, Robin Denholm, an Australian business executive, former accountant, chair of the Tesla board. So I'm just trying to think, is this the board that you think can execute the changes that need to be done?
Well, they don't have a choice. No, look, is this
What do you mean they don't have a choice?
Because they don't have a choice where sometimes boards, look, if you go back to history of Tesla, when Elon does what he do, you can never argue a bet against them. And that's been the MO, right? That's been the DNA. The problem is that essentially the clock strikes midnight when now it comes to these political ventures and endeavors, as well as the time spent at Tesla. The board, you're not going to have a major change or makeup in a board. The board now, as a public company, needs to, new pay package, we talked about, 25% voting shares, but then establish the guardrails, because it's a public company and shareholders are demanding, and the stock reflects changes that need to be made.
Tesla sales get hammered over the last year, and that really the narrative has been around Musk and his association with politics, whether we're talking about that in the US or about that in Europe. But what about the China factor? Does Tesla have what it takes to compete around the world with Chinese EVs?
They have what it takes with Musk. In other words, like, Musk is the biggest.
But they don't have the products. But they don't have products that compete at those price points and with that tech.
Yeah. So on that point, look, as someone spends time in China, like competition, BYD, NIO, Xpeng, everything we've seen, clearly it's become much more of a competitive market. I continue to view that Tesla is still a gold standard globally when it comes to EVs. I think when it comes to China, look, the big game right now that they're trying to win, it's not necessarily about deliveries. It's about, can they win the autonomous and robotics future? That is the way you get to $2 trillion, the way you get to $1 trillion incremental valuation because of autonomous is
the millions of people who securely trade popular crypto assets at one of the lowest costs on app.
$1 trillion incremental valuation because of autonomous is that way.
You know, it's interesting that you say that, because one of our producers, Sebastian Escobar, said, hey, those are coming to my town where I live in, which is just across from Lower Manhattan. And I'm like, wait, what? And Waymo seemed to be expanding pretty aggressively. And so it does seem like folks are going after what could be ultimately the future, really autonomous works. I mean, that's where the growth comes, right? Going forward for Tesla, in your view?
Sure, but to that point, like, look, Waymos are $200,000 cars. Like, you're essentially in scale and scope. Tesla, we're talking about 20-25 cities over the next year when it comes to robotaxi. I mean, that's the whole opportunity. Like, when you think about 20% of what I view as like ride sharing over the next 4 or 5 years is going to be autonomous, no driver. So that's the opportunity that Tesla's going after. But then it goes back to politically, you can have Trump Duffy, whoever else you want to talk about for administration, not as a friend, but as a foe, when you go into the most important chapter of growth and success, what I view on the horizon for Tesla.
Has Elon reached out to you? Have you reached out to him?
I mean, I won't comment there. I would just say that, like, the message has definitely been received by Elon. It's been received by the board. And that was my goal, right? Like, my goal is that's, like, tough love, right?
Yeah.
Like, the point is, like, it comes down to, like, if you don't ever, if you, like, you know, it's like there's good times and bad times. But this is a time, and the stock reflects it, that the board, the adults in the room, whatever you want to talk about, they need to lay the guardrails out for Musk, especially around the political ambition. That is the key.
Dan, how does it feel to have Elon Musk tell you to, in all seriousness, what did it feel like to have him tell you to shut up on his platform? He's got, I don't even know how many followers he has. It has to be over 100 million, hundreds of millions
I think
at this
it's like
point.
220 million.
220 million followers. How did that feel? I mean, I imagine, too, his sort of army came after you as well.
Yeah, but I don't, you know, we know each other well. It's like, I don't worry about that. I mean, to me, I just actually view it more as like, he has his right to an opinion. I disagree. I'm a huge supporter of him and Tesla, but I'm more focused on, like, it creating dialogue. Like, he'll say, shut up, Dan, and I'll have 100 memes sent to me about different shut up, Dan stuff. And actually a guy in the street yesterday yelled from New York City across the street, like, shut up, Dan. So that's, look, that's cool. But I create all day, right? That's the important thing, what it means for the Tesla story. That's the whole goal.
I wonder, has the board reached out to you and said, hey, thanks, Stan, for that?
Or members of the board?
Assist, yeah.
No, I mean, the good thing is, like, I definitely feel like this message has been received by the board. You know, I think everyone's seen it. And at least now, look, now are there actions? Like, what is the board package? Remember, his the other 56 billion in the legal sort of limbo because of Delaware. Proxy still hasn't been, you know, ultimately sent. That's been delayed. So this is a key period of time for the board, for Musk.
Another message that was received for the world of Elon Musk was from the CEO of X, Linda Yaccarino, stepping down as CEO after 2 years. Post on X.
Right? Besides the fact that she's a Penn Stater, we are. But that,
all right, pull back. Let's, you know.
She navigated massive political storm, right? And I think very few people. The advertising. Big hole her leaving because she has a unique background because of advertising, because of her personality. I think she got along very well with Musk. So it is a huge, you know, what I view as it's a negative, but now it comes down to, like, who fills that role.
What's up, Carl Nation? It's your number one broker with the best full-service wealth management skills.
I mean, there are a couple of ways to read that. Every company in the semiconductor industry is a cyclical company because the semiconductor industry is by its nature cyclical. How long these cycles last, when they peak and trough, that's something that a lot brighter people than me try to pick and choose from, and that's how you make your money as an investor. What we can say is, just by the numbers alone, that it's in unprecedented territory. Where its revenue is, not to mention its market cap, as you just pointed out, we've never seen anything like this.
Does it make sense to you, someone who understands this industry and has followed it for so long?
I think you have to just fall back on the numbers, Carol, and let investors decide whether it makes any sense. So on a price to earnings ratio of 52 times, doesn't sound totally crazy, and that doesn't even get it into the top 10 list of semiconductor makers. So relatively, it's not that expensive. No other semiconductor company has ever had more than $100 billion of revenue ever, not even Intel at its peak.
Yeah.
Nvidia blew past 120 last year. This year it's probably going to be closer to 200. So again, the numbers say it's achieving more than any other chip maker has ever achieved. No semiconductor company has ever had more than $100 billion of revenue ever, not even Intel at its peak.
Yeah.
Nvidia blew past 120 last year. This year it's probably going to be closer to 200. So again, the numbers say it's achieving more than any other chip maker has ever achieved, and it's still doing that at a relatively profitable rate.
There's also a report out there, I think it's the FT today, and it's NVIDIA planning to launch a new AI chip design specifically for China as soon as September, with Jensen Huang, of course, planning to visit to reassert the company's commitment to their country. Again, I'm just reporting what FT is saying. I'm just curious what you're hearing about that, or is it also just a sign of him trying to kind of continuing to figure out his next market move and where he needs to be, and making sure he's kind of getting to all the possible customer audiences that are out there?
I think the way to look at that kind of reporting and the reporting that we've done on this area is this is the one kind of cloud on the horizon for this company, which is China is the largest market in the world for semiconductors. That country and its companies want to spend a ton of money on AI infrastructure. They cannot spend money on NVIDIA chips because of the US government. So Jensen is going to probably be in Washington soon. Kind of shuffling between the two because he has two masters to please. One that controls what he can do, the other that can arguably pay his wages to a large extent. They're already losing billions of dollars in revenue that they can't, because they can't sell into China. So this, is symptomatic of what he has to do. He has to find a way through this, and that'll, make their growth even better than it is right now. Long term, he's saying and arguing vehemently about this, that look, if we can't do business in China, they'll find another way to do this, and that will hurt us.
Well, speaking of China, perhaps the perfect segue to talk about today's big take. It's a Bloomberg exclusive. It's an analysis that shows how China is building giant data centers in the desert to fuel its AI ambitions, and it's looking to buy 115,000 banned NVIDIA chips to power them. Ian, you were one of the reporters who worked on this piece. How is China going to get its hands on these chips?
I mean, it's very important to point out, as we do in the story, that while there is some evidence or some belief that some of NVIDIA's banned products are making their way across the border, there's no evidence that enough to even constitute a sort of medium-sized data center are making it across the border. So obviously this is something we're monitoring, something that the government is monitoring, and something that certainly NVIDIA and its customers will be held accountable for. But there's a gap between the desire and what's actually possible right now, as far as at least the reporting in that story would indicate.
I also do wonder, it just is a reminder too of China's own AI ambitions and what it's looking to do, and if it's not with NVIDIA chips, it'll make its own, or it'll figure another way.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of conversations, including by NVIDIA, and they're saying, look, Huawei before all of the actions taken by the US government against him, was a very competent company. Of course we've slowed it down, of course we've made it more difficult, but it's still a very competent company. Forced into the situation that it's in, it's going to find its own way. It might take it a while, but guess what? It'll get there. Do not underestimate it, is one of the big arguments that's being made there. And, you know, perhaps if we're not going to allow other countries, maybe they go to China.
Kid is hurting, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Selby Khan has been Jeff Williams' number 2 for a very long time. He's been the senior vice president of operations. Now he's stepping into the COO role. He effectively has been COO for the past several years, right? His new role is the same as his old role. In addition to adding Apple Care responsibility, Jeff Williams was the COO because he ran operations, but also had several other things under his purview, including co-management of the China business, the Apple Watch, as well as the health initiatives and the company's design team. Apple said yesterday that the design team will move under the leadership of Tim Cook, which is a bit of a head scratcher, but I can get into why they're doing that. The Apple Watch hardware was actually moved 3 years ago to John Turnus, the head of hardware engineering, and the health initiatives are probably going to move to the services organization, given that they're going to a more subscription focused on health. And so a slew of different changes. Operationally, Apple is not going to miss a beat, but this is another big exit for Apple. We've been talking about this potential for the past couple of years, so there's going to be a stream of senior vice presidents and top VPs at the company exiting. They're all in retirement age, and so this is happening now, and there'll be more to come.
So, Mark, you got to assume that Apple, in making this move, or, you know, that they thought about what might be some of the fallout and the people that will leave. So having said that, is the timing smart? Is it a case of a massive company kind of getting their C-suite and executive suite in order, as they should be doing and thinking about the future? Or is it something more of a sign of instability? What's your read?
Well, Apple's not doing anything here. They just had a bunch of people on their executive team that are the same age, right? They're all in their early to mid 60s. They all have hundreds of millions of dollars, having worked at Apple and had massive stock packages, right? And so they're just leaving. So this is not Apple shuffling the deck chairs. This is people leaving because they're retiring. They're at the end of their careers. They want to do something different. They're burnt out, right? They're tired. They want to spend time with their grandkids.
So it's not a sign of, you know, Jeff Williams realizing I'm never going to take over, so I'm leaving. And
well,
obviously,
that's probably part of it.
Okay.
Like, Tim Cook's not going anywhere. I think he's going to be CEO in a Bob Iger-like way. So I think he's going to be there another 5 years.
Interesting. CEO in a Bob Iger-like way. You know, just
well, without the leaving and coming back.
Right.
So
you just mean
stay.
age-wise.
He's going to stay.
Age-wise.
Yeah.
Like Iger's what, 75, 74?
So, Mark, one of the most read stories on the Bloomberg terminal in the last hour, and I got this note this morning from Walter Pychik over at, formerly at BTIG, now at Lightshed. He said Apple should consider replacing longtime CEO Tim Cook in a note. He said, quote, Apple now needs a product-focused CEO, not one centered on logistics. Are we going to start to hear more of that?
I think it's completely ridiculous. I think it's nonsensical. And I think it's absurd to put out the idea that Apple should replace Tim Cook. Tim Cook is going to be the CEO of Apple as long as he wants to be the CEO of Apple. He was put in that position for a reason, because his whole life is dedicated to Apple. He doesn't have much else going on. He has dedicated his entire being to running that company, and he has run it for the most part effectively, other than certain product decisions and design decisions. He's not a product-focused leader, but he has the ability and the power to put those types of people in the right positions. In some cases he's done that, in other cases he's not done that. But Tim's not going anywhere anytime soon, and the idea that he should is blasphemous.
But what about the idea that we've talked about with you about?
If termites come back, Terminix will too, and we'll cover up to $250,000 in.
Thanks so much, Melissa Reed. Thanks so much for joining me here in Sun Valley. I want to start off with a topic that I'm hearing a lot of conversation about, which is the AI talent war war. We've heard how Meta and OpenAI are in this AI talent war. They're competing with Microsoft, which you're on the board of, along with Apple and Amazon and Google for AI talent, and also just competing in this AI race in general. Which of these companies do you think is best positioned to win the AI race?
Well, I think the good thing about the AI race is I think there will be a lot of winners, both of startups and large companies. Now, the talent race to your average American looks crazy. The amount of money you're paying individuals in order to do this. Well, if you think about, if you invent the thing that essentially, for example, in my own startup, Manus, is trying to cure cancer, that transforms industries. And if you think this individual is the one to do it, then it begins to get more economic rational. So now in that competition, what I think we're going to see is I actually think the majority of them will win some. The question is which ones win more and which ones win less.
There's been so much money poured into the giant startups like OpenAI, no longer a startup, as well as the amount that's being spent on AI by the tech giants. Is it possible for true startups to compete now in this AI competition?
I think it's relatively straightforward. Now, I say that, of course, as a venture capitalist who's doing these kinds of investments. But I think, look, I'm going to build a $50 billion computer in order to compete on a frontier model. That's challenging for a startup. I'm not sure if there's room for any startup to possibly do that now. However, applications and also going into different areas like cancer discovery, or going into kind of like, oh, I'm going to do this education thing. They're all focused on coding. I'm going to do this, and that kind of getting integrated into the workflow process, doing new kind of consumer apps, those kinds of things, still lots of room for.
You mentioned Manus AI, the AI health tech company you founded. You've also invested in another AI health company. How focused are you on AI in health right now, and will we see other investments in this space? Which companies are you disrupting with these startups?
I don't necessarily think disruption, although maybe it'll happen. It's neither trying to seek to do so or seeking not to do so. In the case of Manus AI, the idea is to create a kind of a drug discovery engine that creates many more molecules that could then be, because cancer is not one cancer thing, there's lots and lots of different forms of cancer, and how do you attack each one in the right way that kills the cancer but doesn't kill the patient? That's the challenge. And so, obviously that'll have huge pharma implications, but we might very well be partnering with pharma companies. That's part of the reason I was like, well, I'm not clear that we're not amplifying versus disrupting. The other one is ultrasound, and using AI to figure out exactly how to get very low frequency ultrasound to the exact right place in the brain. And the thing that's amazing about this, and AI is what unlocks it, because you're getting this very low energy and the just right refraction through the skull, is that it creates a new tool where the only tools we have currently on brain things are very blunt. They're pharmacological, or they're like, TMS stimulation. It's like a boom, as opposed to, oh, let's just touch this very gently. And surgery, obviously, being its own huge issue. And that's part of the reason I invested.
Very interesting. Now, you, shifting gears, been one of the biggest individual donors to the Democratic Party, and we just heard that Elon Musk is starting his own political party. Sam Altman, who you've been close with over the years, explained to me why he feels politically homeless. What are you seeing right now in terms of the political landscape? What do you think of Elon Musk's new party?
Well, I'm very sympathetic to the core cause, which is don't try to add so much to the deficit that you'll add 2.4 trillion in the deficit by, I think it's 2034, right? And so, don't do that. Precisely kind of the question is one of the biggest line items in the federal budget today is the debt service, is the interest rate, is the credit card payment we're paying on debt. So I'm very sympathetic to the cause. The third party is something that, has been tried a number of times and dies all over the place. I mean, some of us are old enough to remember Ross Perot and other vectors of doing it. And so it doesn't strike me as necessarily the best strategy for that, but I think it's important to try to focus on the debt.
And final question, are you seeing more folks in the tech ecosystem leave allegiances with the Trump administration now that Elon Musk has broken up with the Trump administration?
I see more hesitancy about the Trump administration. I don't think it's because of Elon. I think it's because of the tariff policy and the instability and volatility around business.
Well, we're certainly watching that tariff policy. Unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. Melissa and guys, back over to you.
today. Caterpillar up 2%, hitting its highest level since January. Melius Research upgrading the stock to a buy, writing that AI-driven power demand could be a game changer for the company. Rob Wertheimer, the behind the call joins us here on set. His updated price target, $500, is a street high according to FactSet. Rob, great to see you.
Good to see you.
So this is actually a tech adjacent name, an AI adjacent name, and that's why you like Cat.
There's a change in the world coming. I mean, the AI wave is just hard to grasp, and really the demand just being pushed through in power and grid is stunning, and it's creating new opportunities that didn't exist before.
I think most people think of Cat and they think of big machines that dig earth,
Old economy.
yeah, exactly. But we're talking about turbines, we're talking about things that power the energy trade.
Yeah, so Cat has always had a huge engine business, but they go into big industrial things. They go into mining trucks, into frac suites, into tugboats and ferries, and just massive amounts of power, but not on the grid. They've also done backup power in the past, and still do. But in more niche applications. What's changing now is the grid is under strain. So, there's pockets where you don't have power. There's just the AI demand is massive, and so people are putting in their own power plants at data centers. And so the whole world has changed, and that's creating a new opportunity.
And my next guest remains bullish on the stock from here. Joining us is Dan Niles, the founder and portfolio manager at Niles Investment Management. Dan, it's been a while. It's good to see you. I have expected you to be shorting this name because I feel like sometimes that's your style, to come in when the consensus is firmly on one side of the boat. Although, tell me what you think of NVIDIA's journey here. This was a company that 2 years ago was only worth $1 trillion for the first time. Last year, $2 trillion, then $3 trillion, and now here we are at $4 trillion.
Well, I mean, for me, I never short stocks that are consensus. It's if I think the fundamentals are turning and you potentially have a problem. And that's why, if you think about middle of last year, I said, look, I think we're going to have an issue, AI digestion. And if you remember, Microsoft, Amazon, and Google, the three hyperscalers, came out and reported the June quarter of a year ago. And all three revenue estimates went down for the September quarter. All those three hyperscalers reported in the December quarter, and these are obviously the biggest customers of NVIDIA, and all three of those estimates went down for revenues for the March quarter. And the reason is you had an issue where if you're training on all the data on the internet, which is what you were doing by the middle of last year, there's no more data to train on other than the stuff that comes on a daily basis. And so you went through this slowdown in there, and you look at NVIDIA stock, it went down 49% from intraday high to intraday low. Then you had the big write-off, which ultimately ended up being $4.5 billion.
That was
China
in the first quarter. I just want to make sure to take people back to that. Going into NVIDIA's earnings announcement, there was all of this concern about what potential export controls were going to mean for the business, export controls to China. They came in, they had a big write-down, in some ways even bigger, I think, than people were expecting. But you say it was important that they got the number out and got that behind them.
Yeah, and that's when we turned bullish, because we put out a note in early May talking about, actually I think it was late April after that write-down, saying, look, this is great because it de-risks the numbers. The write-down originally started at $5.5 billion. Analysts had to cut the numbers, take China out of the estimates. But also at the same time, so training spending is slowing down, but you finally had inference spending picking up. And so that means people are going to ChatGPT, OpenAI, Gemini, which is the one I use a lot. I probably use it 10 to 20 times a day. And you had inference demand really start to take off. Google talked about the fact that in the month of May, the tokens that they were generating were up 50 times year over year. And then Microsoft, which obviously was invested in OpenAI back in 2019, but before any of us had even heard of ChatGPT in 2022, they came out and said, hey, we have a 5x increase in the number of tokens we're generating. And so you put all that together, companies forecast de-risk because of that massive write-down. some of the sovereign AI demand as President Trump went to the Middle East, and you had all these deals, all of that stuff. And you have a 40 multiple, which if you look at some of these other Mag 7 names, you go, that's not unreasonable for a company that's growing revenues. Probably for the next several years, they can probably grow it at about 20%.
Right. Is CIO and Chief U.S. Equity Strategist at Morgan Stanley. And Mike, actually, this was something Dan Niles brought up last hour too, vis-a-vis Apple, which has been lagging. You would think like a 10-ish% drop in the dollar during the quarter should help its results, but obviously AI is a bigger question mark.
Yeah, I think for the multinationals, there's no doubt that a weaker dollar, I think, is part of the story for why revision factors have continued to move even faster recovery than we had expected. It's actually as powerful as we saw coming out of COVID, which is hard to believe. And part of that is the tailwind from that weaker dollar. So there's a lot of tailwinds, Kelly. I mean, obviously while the tariff situation is not resolved, it's nothing like it was 2-3 months ago. And the numbers did come down in anticipation of those tariffs, and so now it's almost a reflexive move from just the revisions having been so pessimistic, and now we have these other tailwinds. The dollar being one, I think less bad tariffs is the way I would kind of condition it, and then of course the other drivers that we're seeing now with AI picking up, the tax bill going through, etc.
I mean, the strange thing about kind of the way the dollar plays into earnings and all of that is that we can all see it. We all know the level on every given day. It shouldn't be much of a surprise. You should be able to factor it into your models and all that. And yet people seem surprised. We had a similar period last year where there must have been a period of dollar weakness or something where it all of a sudden came, or maybe it's the opposite, dollar strength came up a lot in calls, and a lot of the stocks moved 4 or 5% on it. So obviously it's not fully priced in.
That's right. And I mean, at some point it does get fully priced in. And oh, by the way, we can't rule out that the dollar will have some strength at some point. In fact, technically, it looks like it may.
What do all these moves tell us about where we are in the markets right now, Tim?
It tells us that the market is not only responding to momentum, but following the leadership of mega cap tech stocks, who obviously from a mathematical perspective pull the indices up. But I thought today was interesting because I think we have a lot of breadth out there too. I mean, if you look at what's going on, small caps are up over 1%, so they actually outperformed today. If you look at cost industrials, which have been performing all year, all we do seem to do is talk about banks. We have earnings coming up now next week, and I think we're getting upon an earnings season. The fascinating part about this is Q1 earnings was really almost a pass. It was a pass on uncertainty. Now, we still may have a lot of that uncertainty, and maybe this is a market that right now is inclined to do that. But I like markets here. I like them in the absence of what has been some rockiness. We've got a VIX sub 15, which could change very quickly depending on Washington. But in the absence of kind of status quo right now, markets want to go higher.
Yeah.
VIX sub 16.
Sub 16. What did I say?
16. Yeah. Oh, I thought it was 15. My bad.
I might have. And that, it might be tomorrow then.
It's low. And it came down.
It's low.
It is low. And I think this to me is starting to get a little bit frothy again, right? I mean, so the $4 trillion thing, that's kind of we love round numbers, and any kind of time we could use any of the graphics with sort of the Roger Bannister of
wow.
If you're a sports trivia person, the $4 trillion mark probably will be broken again.
There it is.
So that's all nice. I do think the market sort of got another charge when the Fed had a little bit of opening of that maybe there are some rate cuts there, and I'm sort of coming around to that they should be cutting.
Yeah, and I think that is what's driving a lot of this, that if we are going to see the Fed cutting rates this year, which a lot of people are expecting at this point, and you're seeing growth is actually continue to be strong. A lot of people thought growth was going to fall off a cliff. It's not. You're starting to see inflation coming down. That's a really good setup here for headlines, right? And a lot of that money can make its way back in, and that's where you're seeing a lot of these retail investors are rushing into these like riskier areas of the market. So they're going into your Bitcoins, they're going into things like your Nvidias, these things that maybe are getting expensive and maybe frothy to your point, but I don't know if the FOMO trade is done there yet. But what you should be doing is broadening out, to Tim's point, but I don't know if these trades are actually over at this point.
The obvious is risk on, and the not so obvious is that this was the biggest canary in the coal mine for tariffs and trade. So did they ring the bell for the all clear months ago, weeks ago? It looks like they did. I mean, look at the one that's in the target zone. 12.5% of sales, $4.5 billion write down, and the stock off to the races. I still wouldn't buy it. Here's the problem: customer concentration, and all of those customers are looking for other ways to develop their own chips. That didn't hurt Nvidia to go from 90 up to where it is now, but I cannot buy it now. Frothy, Karen said. I think the point, if Karen, I shouldn't say that. I think that what makes Nvidia a winner in the AI space is going to be chip.
Prime Day is here with great deals on whatever you're getting it.
Some stuff just costs more, except airfare. Find cheaper flights this summer on Kayak. Download now.
With the big, beautiful budget bill signed into law last week, we're now stuck with the onerous task of figuring out what's actually in this massive piece of legislation and what it means for all sorts of industries. In some cases, it's tricky, because even when the new rules are clear, it's not obvious how they'll play out. Gambling industries in America over the past few years, dominated by DraftKings and Flutter Entertainment, the parent of FanDuel. There was an obscure provision in the big, beautiful bill added late in the process. It seems like it could impact these companies significantly. But Wall Street's had a strange reaction to it over the past few weeks. See, buried within the legislation, it's at the bottom of page 237 of the 870-page behemoth, is a change in the way that gambling income is taxed. Under the current law, you have to pay taxes on your gambling winnings. Crucially, though, if you also have gambling losses, you can deduct those from your winnings, so that you're only paying taxes on your net winnings, the same way we do in the stock market. So if you win $1,000 betting, but also lose $1,000 betting, you don't pay a penny in taxes, which makes sense, because you didn't make any money. But starting next year, that's about to change. While you'll still pay taxes on your gambling winnings, you'll only be able to deduct 90% of your gambling losses. So in that same example I just gave you, win $1,000, also lose $1,000, $100 in losses, meaning you'd have to pay taxes on the remaining $100, the winnings. I think that's brutal. This small change to the way gambling winnings are taxed was added to the Senate version of the bill at some point last month, and we only started to see people raise the issue last week. Personally, I didn't hear about it until a professional poker player posted it on X last Tuesday, explaining in a 4-minute video that this rule will essentially put professional gamblers out of business, who might make $200,000 a year from $5.2 million in gains and $5 million in losses. With the new rule only letting them deduct $4.5 million in losses, that player would be taxed as though they made $700,000, meaning they probably owe more in taxes than they actually made that year. Business. Of course, it's much bigger than just the relatively signed into law by President Trump on the 4th of July. People finally started asking what this new rule means for the gaming industry, especially the popular online sport books like DraftKings and FanDuel that dominate the business. It's easy to imagine how this new legislation would damage the whole industry. Forget professional gamblers. If regular bettors are facing the possibility of having to pay taxes if they break even or even lose slightly, they might decide that it's not worth doing. Heck, even the winners will have to pay more taxes on the gains. But you know what? Since the Senate unveiled its version budget bill in mid-June, the version that included the change to gambling gambling taxes, the stocks of DraftKings and Flutter have been roaring. DraftKings rallied nearly 20% in June, and Flutter was up 13%. And they're both basically flat in July when people started focusing on this issue. So what the heck is happening here with this taxation thing? Okay, on Monday, analysts at Citizens published a note on the implications of the budget bill for the online gambling space and offered a more tempered view of the subject. While they acknowledge the problem, these analysts aren't too worried about it because the major sports books already do everything they can to push away customers who win too often, known as the sharks. They're also not worried about so-called VIPs, which are people who bet a lot but don't do as well as the sharps, because in the analyst's words, quote, sports betting companies are only catering to these players, knowing they are net losers in the long run, which would not be impacted by the incremental taxation, end quote. Basically, the new taxation is very bad for professional gamblers or anyone who knows how to win reliably. But those are the last people FanDuel or DraftKings want. In fact, if the budget bill puts these people out of business, it might actually be a good thing for the online sports books. The truth is, most gamblers on these sports betting platforms lose money. There's a reason why this is a great business to be in. And anyone with substantial losses really won't be impacted anyway. Of course, there's another reason why Wall Street doesn't seem to be worried about this change in taxation for gambling winnings. There's a very good chance it might be reversed. On Monday, the congresswoman who represents Las Vegas introduced a bill that would restore the 100% deduction for gambling losses. Given this is it only costs $1.1 billion, I can see that bill passing. But honestly, I don't think it matters. DraftKings and Flutter haven't even bothered to push back against the new provision. And historically, these companies are very, very vocal about any legislation that hurts the business. I don't think they're shedding any tears over this tax provision that drives away gamblers who win too often. So we reached out to both DraftKings and Flutter Entertainment for a comment here. DraftKings said they support the new bill to restore the 100% deduction for gambling losses. So far, Flutter hasn't gotten back to us. But at least DraftKings sounds like they don't like the new rules, even if they're clearly not fighting tooth and nail to reverse them. Ultimately, I think this is something we need to watch, but it doesn't change my bullish attitude toward DraftKings and Flutter. The thesis here is very simple. These two companies have emerged as an effective duopoly in online sports betting. No one else can verge at coming in on this one. This law just makes the moat even bigger for them. There's building growth to these stories because of the gradual state-by-state rollout of legal sports betting, with some major states like California, Texas, and Florida representing huge opportunities. Also because the industry is a lot less competitive than it used to be, DraftKings and Flutter no longer need to offer big incentives to draw in new customers, making them more profitable. The gambling tax change is clearly not ideal, but there's a very good chance it won't have much impact on either of these companies, and it could even help them. Here's the bottom line. I still like DraftKings and Flutter, but more important, this is just one tiny example of the work that's being done. Not just entertain, but educate to teach. So call me at 1-800-743-CMC or tweet me at Jim Cramer. NVIDIA. Own it, don't trade it. That's been my advice for about $3.7 trillion in market capitalization. Today, NVIDIA became the first $4 trillion company. And it's hard not to celebrate the success of this business or the man behind it, Jensen Huang, who has truly changed the world, your world. It's a big deal to hit $4 trillion, and it captivated the whole market today. Dow gaining 218 points, NVIDIA's in the Dow. S&P advanced 0.61%, and the NASDAQ climbed 0.95%. Before I get into anything else, let me just say this. Jensen Huang is like no other executive I've ever met. I've met a lot of them. When he was in his formative years, Jensen worked at Denny's as a busboy, dishwasher, all those other jobs we don't ever want to do, even if, like me, we did them. I know it seems preposterous, but Jensen impresses me as someone who still acts like he's working at Denny's. Still trying to do a great job. Still being respectful and kind and helpful. Still trying to get ahead. As for the $4 trillion mark, Jensen doesn't have time to celebrate. It's not going to stop. That would be hubris. This man is no hubris. Instead, he has two qualities that are in very short supply these days anywhere. He's graciousness and gratitude. The graciousness is an exact counter to pomposity and arrogance. He doesn't have any of those qualities either. The gratitude, it's to those who believe in him, shareholders, to those who stuck with him, to those who held on through thick and thin. For Jensen, this is just another day of getting up at 4 a.m., doing all the work he has to do, and then spending 8 a.m. on with his teammates at NVIDIA. When you're with him in the company's headquarters, he seems to know everyone by name. Everyone wants to have a selfie with him. He always seems to oblige. I'm not allowed in headquarters unescorted, but my late dog Everest, the one I renamed NVIDIA, well, he was. I renamed him that many years ago because I couldn't get anyone to buy the darn stock. Can you imagine that? And clearly Jensen appreciated the gesture. Now let's talk about this $4 trillion achievement. Let's put it in perspective. In the last 25 years, only 4 companies have earned the title of the biggest public company in America. Microsoft, General Electric, ExxonMobil, and Apple. GE wore the crown twice, Microsoft 5 times, ExxonMobil 7, and Apple an astounding 11 times. Hallowed ground. Of course, GE imploded not long after, too much leverage. ExxonMobil, oil prices shot up, and Exxon was the biggest company in the industry at that time. But the two that still rival NVIDIA, Microsoft and Apple, I think that's the most telling part of this story. Apple took top honors because it has the best smartphone in the world. It's something that at one time everyone wanted, including China. Therein lies the complication that will likely keep Apple from toppling NVIDIA's Mentrise. Much to everyone's chagrin, Apple's in the doghouse with the Trump administration, and they might not get out of it until they start making iPhones here. That said, Apple can still get right back to the horse race, but it will take more and better AI products. It needs a new hit, too. That doesn't mean you should give up on it. For me, Apple remains an own it, don't trade stock. That's the status. Just making the phones with the highest customer satisfaction. But I don't see it taking that crown back from NVIDIA anytime soon. How about Microsoft? It's doing incredibly well. Microsoft's the software king. It's the top cloud services play. It's the #1 gaming company. It's embraced AI with abundance. According to a Bloomberg article today, Microsoft claims to have saved $500 million in its call centers while increasing customer and employee satisfaction. But the fact is, neither Microsoft nor Apple can claim that they're currently creating a new industrial revolution like NVIDIA can. In fairness, they did create the last personal computer, but it was a company that made incredibly fast semiconductors that improved the quality of video games. Nice business, and not earth-shattering. Jensen envisioned so much more, though. He knew that AI would transform everything, and his chips allowed AI to work. You could ask his chips questions, and they could generate answers. Generative AI. I searched for the superlatives of this extraordinary achievement here. How about this? Every single computer with a GPU that's not as good as NVIDIA is obsolete, for that matter. The users just don't know it. Everything needs to be replaced. His chips and the software that comes with them allow companies to do breathtaking things. They enable self-driving cars. They enable humanoid robots. Right now, Jensen wants them to do the 3Ds. That's are the dirty, the dangerous, and the dull jobs. They'll no doubt do far more than that, replacing white-collar jobs of all kinds. Jensen likes to explain that every other industrial revolution created many more jobs than were lost. Although the new job don't. Some analysts saw this coming. Ben Reitzers from Melius can show you piece after piece where he said that NVIDIA was going to overtake all companies. And he kept on the beat that software, long the most beloved part of tech, would be overturned by hardware in terms of its importance and size. And the congrats to Ben to lead that charge. But most analysts emphatically did not see this coming. NVIDIA was repeating the trick pony, if not a flash in the pan. Jensen was never to be considered a GOAT, let alone the GOAT, because he was from the hardware side and nothing more. Each great quarter was supposed to be the last one. Each customer was supposed to be working on something better. Each iteration was supposed to be too expensive versus what it provided. Endless doubt, no belief. One day we'd wake up and see that Microsoft or Meta or Alphabet or Amazon or a Chinese company would have something better. There's even been some play. Senator David Faber.
Hey, if NVIDIA is so great, Jim, then why is the stock down?
Because it's up 80, David, it's been up 80%. Okay, because they're not splitting the stock, I'm going to get a split. That's what I'll do here. I promise I'll get you a split of NVIDIA stock. How's that? Oh, we got the split. But the competition hasn't caught NVIDIA. You know why? Because Jensen wakes up before the other guy and works harder than the other guy to make sure that